Hello there, my dear sleepy listener. Welcome to another quiet voyage of wonder where science doesn't speak in loud formulas or flashing diagrams, but in sighs, in stillness, in the slow unravelling of the known. Tonight, we'll follow a trail most people never see, the soft and secret path of thoughts after they've been forgotten. What happens to a memory when it slips from your fingers? Where do your oldest feelings hide? Do they vanish, or simply go quiet? You've likely felt it, the almost there sensation of a name on the tip of your tongue, a dream you swore you'd remember, or the flicker of a childhood image that dissolves the moment you reach for it. These moments are not failures. They're part of something beautiful, something alive. Before you drift away into peaceful slumber, please take a moment to like this video, leave a gentle comment about your favourite moment of science, and subscribe to keep these bedtime stories coming. Let us know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, get cozy, and let your curiosity float alongside the stars. You begin tonight not with a bang, but with a breath. A single thought drifts into view, barely formed, barely spoken. It's light, like a dust mote caught in sunlight. You reach for it softly, and it wavers in your palm. It smells like something distant. It reminds you of someone you no longer remember. And then it's gone. Not snapped, not broken, just released. It vanishes like breath on a mirror, and you're left with a strange sense of peace, as if even the act of forgetting carries its own kind of wisdom inside your head. Something extraordinary is always happening. Over 86 billion neurons hum quietly beneath your skull, a forest of possibility. They speak in tiny bursts of electricity, but thoughts, those flickers of self, those whispers of identity, are not made in just one place. They are patterns, movements. They are water flowing across a landscape, not the rocks beneath it. And sometimes that water simply dries up. Scientists call it memory decay, but decay is too harsh a word. It suggests rot or failure. What if, instead, we thought of it as memory exhalation? Just as you breathe out carbon dioxide gently, naturally perhaps the mind breathes out old thoughts, not because they were wrong, but because they've served their moment, like autumn leaves that drift down not in sadness, but in rhythm with the season. Some thoughts never even reach the stage of memory. They spark, they flicker, and they vanish before they ever attach. This is called transience. It's not a glitch, it's a feature. If your mind remembered everything, it would drown in noise. You're a symphony, not a storage unit, and forgetting is a way the conductor keeps the music soft, clean, and meaningful. You float through this gentle brainscape like a firefly on slow wings. You pass by connections that once blazed brightly when you first learned to ride a bike, or when someone first whispered your name in a new way. Some still glow, others flicker, their edges blurred. And here, in this moment, you realize something extraordinary. To forget is not to lose. It is to make space. It is to trust that not everything needs to stay to have mattered. There are thoughts you've loved that have left you. There are memories that once kept you warm, now gone like steam rising from a cup. But just as steam becomes cloud, and cloud becomes rain again someday, perhaps those forgotten thoughts aren't truly lost. Perhaps they are just waiting. Scientists still debate where forgotten thoughts actually go. Some say they're overwritten. Others believe they linger in hidden networks, dormant but recoverable. There are people who, under hypnosis or trauma, recall things long thought vanished. So maybe forgetting isn't a locked door. Maybe it's just a quiet hallway, dimly lit, waiting for a key you haven't found yet. You drift deeper now, and the air grows even softer. You're wrapped in the hush of neurons resting between thoughts. There is peace here, not emptiness, but presence, not silence, but breath. And just before you fall further into this night, you sense it, a thought you forgot long ago, smiling at you from the dark, not asking to be remembered, just happy that it once was. You float now through a forest that's alive, but still. The canopy is made not of leaves, but of dendrites, tiny tree-like arms reaching for each other in the hush of electric twilight. There's a scent here, though it's not one your nose can name. It's the scent of thought after it rains, fresh, charged, softly alive. Each step you take along this neural trail reveals a secret. Not all forgotten thoughts are gone forever. Some fall like seeds onto soft soil. They rest there, hidden beneath layers of new experiences, and sometimes they grow again. You pass by a neuron lighting up gently as it remembers how to hum a lullaby from childhood. You didn't mean to remember it. It just arrived. That's the beauty of retrieval. It can be sparked by the strangest things. A scent, a song, the feel of sunlight on your shoulder. And suddenly, what was forgotten isn't, at least, not anymore. This forest is not frozen in place. It is always shifting, always growing. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. It means the brain can change its pathways, carve new trails, reforest old ones, and yes, even recover thoughts thought lost. When you learn something new, neurons fire together, and when they fire together often enough, they wire together, like vines braiding around each other. But when you stop thinking about something, those vines loosen, the path fades. It's not destroyed, just covered in moss. You drift past a memory once vivid, a best friend's voice, a schoolroom smell, a laugh that once made your heart beat in its chest. And for a moment, you feel it again. This is called reconsolidation. It's a process where memories aren't simply recalled, they're rewritten each time. You don't just remember, you recreate, like a painter adding new colour to an old canvas. And because of this, no memory is ever exactly the same twice, which means forgetting isn't binary. It's not on or off. It's not a switch, it's a spectrum. Some thoughts are vivid, some are shadows, and some are seeds still waiting for the right season to bloom. Some scientists believe forgotten thoughts can be reactivated by stimulating certain regions of the brain, especially the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. Others think forgotten memories may still influence behaviour, even if you don't consciously access them, like a scent you didn't notice, changing your mood without a sound. You float now over a clearing where two neurons once danced together. They haven't spoken in years, but as you watch, a signal passes between them. Just one spark, and you smile, because even in forgetting, there is still connection, still possibility, still light. You realise, then, that your mind is not a library. It is a forest, alive, organic, able to forget in order to regrow. A tree cannot hold every leaf it's ever grown, but in every ring of its trunk is a record invisible, silent, but present. So too is your memory shaped by what has been, even when it cannot name it. As you drift onward, you hear something, a rustle behind you. Was it a thought you once knew, a face you forgot? You turn, but there is only silence. Still, you feel its presence. Like a memory returning in the form of a dream, you drift now into the quiet space between, not in the neuron itself, but in the pause, the synapse, that infinitesimal space between one whisper and the next, between one flash of light and the one that follows. This is where your thoughts leap, tiny chemical couriers crossing a chasm, ferrying memory and meaning, emotion and instinct. Each jump is so quick, so fleeting, you'd miss it if you blinked, but you don't blink here. You only float. And in this space, this nearly nothing, you hear something, a hum, not of words, not of music, but of potential. Scientists once believed the synapse was a one-way street. A transmitter speaks, a receiver listens, but now they know it's more like a conversation, an echo chamber, a negotiation, and in forgotten memories, this space may still hold a whisper, not the memory itself, but the trace, the impression, like a fingertip on glass, faded, yes, but there. You drift between two neurons who once spoke daily. Now they're quiet, but the synapse between them still waits like a bench beneath a tree that remembers the lovers who once sat there. You wonder, if a thought no longer fires, is it truly gone, or does it rest in this in-between space, hoping for a spark? This echo, this neural aftersound is called synaptic trace, and it may explain why certain forgotten things come back so suddenly, why you can't recall a song all day, until the moment you stop trying, and then there it is, whole, bright, uninvited, but welcome. You don't summon it, it echoes back. There's a phenomenon called priming, when a related word or image reawakens a dormant connection, something your conscious mind had no idea was waiting. You see a photograph, and suddenly remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen. You hear a bell, and recall the tension of a classroom clock ticking toward lunch. These aren't new thoughts. They're echoes, reverberations of moments once loud and now quiet. Some researchers believe the brain leaves engram traces, physical footprints of memory, tiny shifts in the strength of synaptic connections. Not messages, but grooves. Not sentences, but pathways. And even if a memory has faded, the path may still be there, like a forest trail grown over, but not erased. You imagine walking such a trail now, each step brushing against branches of almost memory. You don't recognize them, but you feel something stir, a chill, a warmth, a familiarity. You pause, listen. The brain's echoes are not always faithful replicas. They are softened by time. They are tinged with feeling. They are dreamlike, but they are still yours. Even a whisper, repeated in enough empty rooms, can start to feel like truth. And perhaps that's what forgotten thoughts are, truths left behind, still echoing quietly in the chambers of your mind. No one knows if every forgotten thought can echo back. Some may vanish entirely, some may be buried too deep to ever return, but some linger, not loudly, not urgently, just enough for you to know they were once real, and maybe. That's all a thought ever needed, to be held, even once, to echo, even faintly. You drift now, weightless in the space between neurons, in the quiet between thoughts, and you feel the echoes, not as noise, but as rhythm, not as memory, but as music, a melody without lyrics, a song only you can hear. The deeper you drift, the more you begin to see that even forgetting is an act of care. The mind, like a quiet home, tends to itself, not all at once, not in haste, but with a rhythm, a calm pulse, a kind of maintenance you only notice when you slow down, like now. You float through this mental space as if you've become light itself. You move slowly, almost reverently, as if tiptoeing through the library of your own existence. And here, in the calm behind your thoughts, the caretakers are at work. They are not grand, not loud. You might never have known their names, microglia. They are the housekeepers of your brain, not there to store thoughts, but to clear the spaces between them. They move delicately, like monks raking patterns into sand. Their task to sweep away what is no longer needed, to prune old connections, to gently dissolve what no longer serves you. And they do this, not with destruction, but with grace. They sense when a synapse has gone quiet for too long. They assess the strength of its voice, and if it has fallen into silence, they begin to unweave it thread by invisible thread. You might imagine them as gardeners, not tearing out weeds in rage, but trimming, shaping, tending, so that new memories have room to root, so that important thoughts can stretch their limbs. This process is called synaptic pruning. It happens quietly, especially during sleep, and it is essential, for without it, your brain would become too tangled, too crowded, a jungle without sunlight. You pass one now, a microglial cell glowing faintly in the dark. It is embracing a withered dendrite, as if comforting it before letting go. Not a funeral, but a farewell. Not a loss, but a release. And you understand even the act of forgetting is an act of love, a trust that you do not need to carry everything. You recall, faintly, how your childhood room once overflowed with toys. Each had its season, and one day, quietly, your hands stopped reaching for certain ones. They were put away, not because they were unloved, but because you had grown. This is what your brain does too. It clears space so you can keep becoming, so you can evolve. Some thoughts are meant to stay. Others are meant to pass through like visitors at a window. The microglia know. They work silently, even now, while you lie in your bed, eyes closed. They are brushing the edges of your memories, dusting the shelves, folding up what no longer sings. No one is quite sure how they choose, what stays, what fades, but somehow they know, and perhaps that's the mystery. The brain forgets not to punish you, but to protect you, to save your energy, to help you navigate a world where every second blooms with new impressions. You drift now past a clearing. The synapses are airy, open, like a room freshly cleaned and filled with sunlight. You smile, not because you remember something, but because you feel light, unburdened. Your mind is not losing itself. It is curating, refining, becoming more of what it needs to be for you. And somewhere, in the hush between thoughts, a microglial cell glows faintly, bowing its head before sweeping gently onward. The space grows warmer now, denser with meaning. You are floating deeper into the core of memory, the hippocampus, shaped like a gentle curve of a seahorse. This part of your brain is the archivist, the scribe, the quiet collector of your days. But tonight, it is not locked behind doors. It welcomes you in. You enter a space that feels more like a chamber of soft glass than a structure of flesh. The walls are fluid, flickering as if lit from behind by lanterns swinging gently in a breeze. Everywhere you look, impressions shift. Places you've been, words once whispered, familiar smells braided into long-ago mornings. This is not where your memories live forever, but it's where they first arrive, where they're shaped and given a name. The hippocampus doesn't store your memories like books on a shelf. It arranges them like flowers in a vase, temporary, beautiful, and in motion. You pass by scenes frozen in soft light. Your first home. A song once sung in a language you no longer speak. The face of a friend who walked away before you learned how to say goodbye. Some memories are sharp, some are dim. Some feel like looking through a window still smudged with breath. But even the blurry ones pulse with presence. You reach out and brush your fingers across a pane of glass. Behind it, a room from your past. You remember it, sort of. But something's missing. A colour, a sound, a detail that once made it whole. And you wonder, is this forgetting, or is this memory changing its shape? Scientists call the hippocampus the indexer. It links together sights, sounds, emotions, so that a single cue can bring the whole memory rushing back. But if even one piece of the link fades a sound, a smell, the memory might feel hollow, incomplete, as if behind a fogged window. Still, it is not gone. You drift further and see the hippocampus at work. It is not frantic. It is not urgent. It works like a librarian arranging newly arrived letters. This one belongs to the day's joy. This one belongs to a sorrow still too raw. Some are filed for safekeeping, others set gently aside. But what about the ones it forgets? The ones that never get stamped? Some researchers believe that if your brain decides an experience isn't emotionally significant, it simply lets it fade. Others suggest memories degrade if not revisited, like ink fading in the sun. And yet, sometimes, years later, you catch a scent, hear a phrase, step into a room, and the hippocampus opens a window. And there it is, the room, the feeling, the heartbeat of who you were, reassembled in a blink. You smile. Not everything forgotten is lost. Some memories just need the right key, and others they choose to wait. Here in this warm, seahorse-shaped cathedral of memory, you feel the comfort of that waiting. You feel the grace of not knowing everything all at once. You feel safe, because your brain, like the hippocampus, is not just a recorder, it is a storyteller. And every good story needs some mystery, some shadows. Some windows just slightly ajar. You drift on, leaving the soft chamber behind. The lights grow dimmer, but your heart is a little fuller, because you understand now to forget is not to fail. It is to trust the story knows when to turn the page. The world around you dims to a hush, and even your thoughts begin to speak more slowly. You're not fully awake, not quite asleep. You hover in that strange, silken space where your body lets go, and your mind begins its quiet, nightly work. This is where forgetting begins to take form, not as absence but as sorting, as choice, as a tender act of organization performed in shadows. You float now into the rhythm of sleep, and it's nothing like drifting off a cliff. It is waves, it is tides, slow swells of neurochemical motion pulling you down, and deeper still. Most people think of sleep as a pause, a time when the brain rests. But you know better now. Here in this soft ocean of mind, you watch the work begin. Your brain is busier now than it was during the day. Only, it's not thinking the same way. It's sorting, cleaning, filing, forgetting with care. Neuroscientists have studied this nightly ritual with blinking machines and delicate wires. They've seen how the brain replays the day's events in brief, compressed flashes, little electrical storms in the hippocampus, flashes of experience stored, tested, and sometimes released. You drift over one of these storms now. It is not violent. It is delicate, a flicker, as if a memory is being rewound, sampled, and then either saved or softly erased. This is the process of memory consolidation. Every night, your brain decides what to keep and what to let go. Some things are kept because they matter, because they're new, because they've been repeated, because they're emotionally charged. Other things are let go because they serve no purpose. A fleeting comment, a face in a crowd, a number glanced at once and never used again. There's grace in this forgetfulness. Not everything you see deserves a place in your long-term self. The stages of sleep help organize this quiet work. In deep non-REM sleep, memories begin the migration from short-term storehouses to more durable neural networks. Then, during REM sleep, that fluttering, dream-rich stage connections strengthen or fade. Some scientists call it the brain's nightly file transfer protocol. Only here, the files are sensations, smiles, feelings, ideas not yet fully formed. You drift now through the corridors of a sleeping brain. You see flashes not of dreams, but of sorting. Here, a memory of laughter is delicately moved. There, an unfinished worry is placed aside. Some will return tomorrow, others won't, and that too is kindness. A single night's sleep can dramatically change what you remember, or what you forget. Studies show that people who are allowed to sleep after learning something remember it far better. But if sleep is interrupted, if REM is stolen by stress or screens, the memory may never take root. It may fade, unanchored, so you understand now why you sometimes forget entire days. It's not because you weren't paying attention. It's because your brain didn't get the chance to decide what to keep. In this soft theatre of the night, the memory caretakers perform their quiet ballet. They are not loud, they are not quick, but they are precise. Your dreams, meanwhile, flutter like curtains. They are not random. They may be the brain's way of testing, of replaying, of strengthening. You pass a dream now, one you thought you'd forgotten. It shimmers, unfinished, not a memory, not quite fiction, but something in between, and perhaps you realize that's where all forgotten thoughts go, into the space between what was real and what was possible. There's a theory called the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis. It suggests that the brain uses sleep to downscale, to weaken unnecessary synapses, like pruning a garden of overgrown connections, so that the important thoughts stand tall and clear. You drift among these synapses, watching some fade into silence, not with sadness, with peace, because forgetting during sleep is not erasure, it's refinement, a clearing of static, a turning down of the volume. If you remembered everything, every shadow, every flicker, every irrelevant moment, your mind would be overwhelmed. You'd never know what mattered. So sleep protects you from that. It shapes your narrative. And here's the secret. Your forgetting is part of your becoming. You wake not as a carbon copy of yesterday, but as something subtly changed, smoothed, refreshed. You're not the person you were when you closed your eyes. You're someone new, someone lighter. And perhaps that's the beauty of sleep's secret filing system. It doesn't ask your permission. It just does the work, kindly, quietly, night after night. You drift onward now, past the hum of memories being stored and stories being softened. You let go of what doesn't need to follow you into tomorrow. You exhale the weight of unnecessary thought, and you smile because forgetting here feels like grace. The stillness here feels sacred. You're floating through a quiet realm within yourself, where words once lived in vibrant bloom, adjectives twirling, nouns glowing, verbs leaping with motion. Now, many have gone still, not absent, just softened, like petals fallen after spring has passed, their scent still lingering in the folds of your memory. This is the language center of your brain, and it, too, forgets, not with violence, not with cruelty, but like a field letting go of flowers so it can sleep beneath snow. You pass through Broca's area now, that tender fold where speech is shaped, and Wernicke's where meaning lives. They hum in silence tonight, neither calling for attention nor spinning frantic word webs. You drift as if through an old library after closing, where stories have whispered themselves into rest. It's here you begin to feel the gentle ache of words you used to know, the ones you misplaced, the ones on the tip of your tongue, that bittersweet space where the mind reaches, almost grasps, and then sighs. And what a marvel that is, to almost remember, to feel the shape of a word without its name. There's a term for that moment, lethologica, a soft, scientific name for the sensation of forgetting a word mid-sentence. It comes without warning. It humbles us, and yet it reveals how deeply language lives within us. Even forgotten, it leaves behind footprints. You drift into a conversation you once had, long ago. You can't recall every sentence, but you remember how it made you feel. The tilt of the other person's voice, the warmth that bloomed after they spoke, that too is a kind of memory. Studies show that emotional tone is often remembered more strongly than precise words. And so, we may forget the quote, but remember the comfort. Forget the line, but recall the laughter that followed. This is part of forgetting's quiet elegance. It holds on to what matters, not always what was said, but how it echoed in your heart. You pass by an old phrase you once loved. It flickers now, incomplete, but you don't feel sad. You feel grateful that you loved it once, and that, perhaps, it shaped your voice in ways you still carry. Language, like thought, is never truly static. Words you knew as a child may have shifted in meaning. Others may have slipped away. Some fade because you no longer need them. Others because they belonged to people, to places, to versions of yourself that have since drifted into distance. And yet, the brain remembers in strange ways. You may forget a word for years until it's needed again. And there it is, ready, not dead, just waiting. Neuroscientists believe this happens because language is stored in layered networks. A forgotten word isn't necessarily gone, it may simply be stored beneath fresher ones, like paper layered on a desk. When you stop using a word, its neural path fades. But if you use it again, that path begins to brighten. You're not relearning, you're reawakening. You drift now through poetic chambers. You see lines of verse you once read, not whole, not perfect, but pulsing with meaning. Your brain does not store language like files and folders. It stores it like music in echoes, rhythms, associations, feelings. This is why poetry can outlast precision. Why you might forget the details of an essay, but remember how a stanza made you weep. You pass a fragment now, a sentence once spoken in the heat of an argument. You no longer remember what started it, but the weight of it still lingers, a phrase shaped by anger, or maybe sorrow. And this, too, is language, not just the word, but the scar, not just the phrase, but the silence that followed. Some words, when forgotten, free us. Some, when forgotten, haunt us. And some leave behind only the feeling of something once whole. You drift through this silence now, and feel the humility of forgetting. It reminds you that you are not a machine. You do not store things perfectly. You're not meant to. You're a tide, a current, always learning, always shedding, always transforming. And perhaps this is why the words that stay with you feel so precious, because they have survived the soft sifting. They've returned through the veil. They've made themselves known again. You smile as you pass a word you once loved, a word you whispered once into the curve of someone's shoulder. You had forgotten it for years, and now, in this dreamlike drift, it returns. You do not say it aloud, you simply carry it, like a petal, like a prayer. And as you drift farther still, the language grows quieter, not gone, just resting. You do not need to remember every word, only enough to shape the person you're becoming, only enough to keep your heart open to meaning. Because forgetting is not the opposite of language, it is its rhythm, its breath, its space between the notes. You let go of another word, it floats upward toward the stars, and you, weightless and at peace, float onward too. The fog here is soft, like a veil of breath on cold glass. You drift into it slowly, gently, as if walking through an old photograph where the ink has begun to fade. You do not rush. You move like memory does, in curves, in hushes, in almosts. You're not alone here, not quite. All around you, shadows take shape faces, some familiar, some unfamiliar, or perhaps not unfamiliar, just misplaced. You recognize the curve of a cheekbone, the sparkle of an eye. You feel the pull of recognition like a tide inside your chest. But when you reach for the name, it slips, like water through fingers. And that's the mystery of faces, how deeply they bury themselves inside your mind. The human brain is extraordinary at recognizing them. There's even a special fold behind your right ear, the fusiform face area devoted entirely to that task. A little lighthouse shining through your neural sea, calling out, I know you. I've seen you before, but it doesn't always remember who they are or why they matter. You pass a face now, an old classmate. Perhaps you can't recall their voice, only the shape of their smile, and the feeling you once had sitting next to them, warmth, silliness, a secret you shared once and never spoke of again. This is what the brain does with faces. It stores the emotional resonance, the spatial map, the symmetry and motion. But names, those are filed elsewhere, in places more fragile. That's why you can often remember a person's face perfectly, but forget their name seconds after introduction. A phenomenon so common, it has no need for a fancy label. And yet, you still feel the pull of the almost. You drift now through a gallery of these half-remembered beings. A neighbour from childhood, a waitress who once offered you extra whipped cream, a stranger you saw crying on a subway, whose story you never knew but never forgot. They all live here, inside you, not as facts, not as names, but as shapes, flickers, emotional silhouettes. Some researchers believe we store as many as 5,000 faces in our memory, but only a few hundred come easily to mind. The rest are like books on a high shelf, not gone, but gathering dust. Sometimes, these faces reappear in dreams, uninvited, vivid. You wake with their eyes still vivid in your mind, even though you haven't seen them in years, and sometimes you'll spot them on the street, only to realize it was someone else entirely your brain searching for connection in the fog. Prosopagnosia is a rare condition where the ability to recognize faces is lost. Some who suffer from it can no longer even recognize their own reflection. Others see the parts eyes, nose, mouth, but can't weave them into meaning. It's a reminder of how fragile, how precise the mind's face mapping system really is. And yet for most, forgetting a face doesn't mean losing it completely. It simply becomes softer, more diffuse. You pass through one now, someone you once loved. You can't picture them clearly anymore, but the feeling remains, like music heard through a wall. The brain, it seems, remembers feeling even when form begins to blur, even if the face changes, even if the name disappears. You remember how they made you laugh. You remember the warmth in their presence, the quiet ache in their absence. And here's the magic. Sometimes, faces you've forgotten completely will return with startling clarity. A dream, a smell, a phrase, and suddenly they are there. You may even wonder were they ever truly gone. Perhaps not. Perhaps they were simply waiting, like old friends at a train station, unreadable in the fog until the moment your heart remembers the way. You drift now through fog that glows at the edges. These forgotten faces do not haunt you. They hum. They are part of your internal gallery, some framed in gold, some penciled in charcoal, some sketched with invisible ink. Not every face is meant to be remembered perfectly. Some are meant to be felt. You pass a stranger now, or maybe not a stranger. Someone who held the door for you. Someone who smiled as they passed. A moment that didn't need to be remembered. And yet, somehow, here it is. And you realize something gentle and profound. You're also living in someone else's neural fog. Your face, your smile, your kindness, your passing glance may live softly in the mind of someone who can't quite place you. And isn't that beautiful? You float on, not trying to remember now, only honouring what was once known, letting the fog rise and fall, letting the faces bloom, then blur. Forgetting, you now understand, is not the opposite of loving. It is the quiet background hum against which meaning finds its shape. You drift now into the place where logic loosens its grip, where walls melt into rivers and time folds like silk. This is the dream world, the place where the mind sews and unsews itself, where the scraps of your day are stitched into strange, beautiful patterns. You don't walk here, you float, you glide. The landscape morphs with every breath. A street becomes a forest. A stranger becomes your childhood friend. And yet, none of this surprises you. That is the nature of dreams, and it is here, in this twilight theatre, that forgetting does some of its most mysterious work. Scientists have studied dreaming for generations, watching brain waves rise and fall like tides, watching eyes flutter under closed lids like birds trapped behind curtains. They've discovered that the dreaming brain is not asleep. Not exactly. It is alive, buzzing, replaying. Especially in the deeper stages of REM rapid eye movement, the brain performs a strange ritual. It revisits, it recycles, it reinterprets. You're watching it now, memories of your day rising like mist, but not as they were. You see the face of a coworker become a childhood neighbour. You hear today's conversation echo in your father's long-ago voice. Your breakfast blends with your first day of school. Everything overlaps. Everything dances. And maybe, just maybe, this is where some thoughts go when they are forgotten. Not into silence, but into rehearsal. Dreams don't simply reflect reality. They reorganize it. They strip away the unnecessary, highlight the emotional, pair the unlikely. Neuroscientists believe dreams play a key role in emotional processing. They allow the brain to sift through the feelings of the day, the unresolved tension, the quiet triumphs, the words unspoken. Even things you didn't consciously notice may appear in dreams. A passing glance, a flicker of unease, a moment your waking mind ignored, but your deeper self held on to. Dreams are the rehearsal space for the soul, a slow-motion fire where memory is tested, kept, changed, or gently released. You float above a scene now, a moment that happened earlier today, but now it plays differently. The colours are warmer, the ending is softer. You're rewriting it, not intentionally, but your mind is doing what it knows best, weaving meaning from fragments. Sometimes people ask, why do we forget our dreams? But perhaps a better question is, why should we remember them? Dreams do their work whether we remember or not. They're like bees pollinating in darkness, quietly nurturing the garden of your mind. Some researchers believe we forget dreams because the hippocampus, the part of the brain that encodes memory, is partially offline during REM. Others say it's a protective mechanism. Dreams are often too surreal, too overwhelming to carry into daylight. And yet, some fragments survive. A scent, a phrase, a sudden wave of déjà vu that startles you mid-conversation. It is said that the average person dreams for about 2 hours each night. That's a whole movie, a secret life lived while your body rests. And within those 2 hours, some thoughts are remembered, some are refined, and many are released. You float past a dream now that you had long ago. You didn't remember it when you woke, but now it glows again, here in this strange re-entry. It shows you something you didn't know you'd been feeling. It offers no answers, only symbols. A door that never opened. A voice calling from beneath the water. A tree growing upside down. You don't need to understand it. Only honor it. Dreams are not puzzles. They are whispers. They tell you what your waking self has no words for. You drift deeper now, into a place where your childhood dreams still breathe. You remember a recurring dream from long ago, a hallway, a staircase, a feeling of being close to something. You never solved it, but somehow it guided you. And now, you wonder, did those forgotten dreams shape you? Did they tilt your course just slightly, without ever being remembered? Science doesn't have answers for that, only more questions. We know that people who are sleep-deprived struggle with memory, with focus, with emotion, but we don't fully know why dreams take the shapes they do, or why some vanish the moment you open your eyes, while others return years later in the form of art or intuition. And maybe that's the magic. Forgetting a dream doesn't mean it failed. It means it did its work quietly. Like an old friend who came and left while you slept, leaving behind a letter you won't read until much later. You drift now past the edge of a dream. It folds in on itself like paper. It fades like ink in water, but still, you feel a soft shift inside you. something was tended to. Some thought was composted, turned into the fertile soil of your future mind. And maybe that's where some forgotten thoughts truly go into the garden of your dreams, nourishing the self you're still becoming. The air grows still now, thick with echoes. You float towards something ancient, though it's made entirely of you, a place conjured not from stone or mortar, but from impressions, from feelings, from fragments of time. It rises like a great imagined cathedral in the night. This your memory palace. Yes, it is vast. It has corridors lined with the dust of forgotten birthdays, balconies draped in the smells of home-cooked meals you haven't tasted in decades, windows shaped like the laughter of friends who drifted away. You don't build this palace brick by brick. You remember it into being, and every time you return, its shape is slightly different. This is the paradox of memory. It feels solid, but it moves. It feels permanent, but it breathes. You pass through a tall wooden door now and step into a grand room. This one you remember. Clearly, it's filled with books, each one a day you lived. You reach for one. Its pages flutter with ease. Your high school hallway, the sound of your locker slamming shut, the taste of anxiety before an exam. You did not try to remember these things, but here they are, waiting for you like gentle ghosts. You smile, but then you turn a corner and come to another door. This one is locked. You try the handle. It won't budge. You press your ear against the wood. Silence. And yet, you know what's behind it. You've been there. You just can't open it anymore. You float back, surprised by the ache. Why can't you remember this is the experience of retrieval failure? The memory still exists, but the path to it has grown over, like a trail through the woods no one has walked in years. Still there, just buried. Scientists say that memory isn't like a file pulled from a cabinet. It's like a symphony played again each time you remember it. A reconstruction, a performance, and sometimes certain instruments forget their part. You pass another hallway now and feel that uncanny sensation familiarity without clarity. Déjà vu. The brain, it seems, stores fragments of sound, a mood, a colour of light. Sometimes those pieces reassemble in a way that feels like memory, but isn't. Or maybe it is. A hidden room, a dream, a door ajar just enough to whisper you've been here before. You pass mirrors now, not ones that show your face, but your past selves. You see a version of yourself laughing, and another curled under a blanket, crying without words. These are rooms that are always open. Emotion keeps them lit. Because when a memory is tied to strong feeling, it tends to stay, but emotion isn't always enough. Some rooms are missing because the brain decided not to keep them. The technical term is storage decay. Neural connections weaken over time when they aren't used, just like muscles, just like friendships. You pause in front of another room, it's there, but faint. You feel it in your chest more than your mind. It's a childhood moment. You sitting in a plastic chair, the sound of scissors cutting paper, the smell of glue. You can't see the teacher's face. You can't remember what you made, but you feel the piece of it, and that too is memory. Not every room in your palace needs sharp detail. Some are filled with colour, some with music, some with just the softness of being held once, long ago, and then you come to a corridor you've never seen. It feels new, but you know it's old. This is recovered memory, a place hidden in shadow for years that now flickers to life. You touch the walls. They hum. Some say the brain buries certain rooms out of protection, especially ones marked by pain, especially ones shaped by trauma. And when it's ready, when you are ready, the palace unlocks the door. You step inside one now. It is not frightening. It is tender. It shows you a version of yourself you'd forgotten. Young, vulnerable, brave. And you understand something that makes your eyes sting. To forget is not to discard. It is to protect. It is to give the self time. You leave that room slowly, gratefully. You pass through more halls, some glowing, some cold, some half-built, like dreams you meant to remember but didn't. You wonder what happens to the rooms you never enter again. Do they collapse? Do they wait? Do they drift away? No one knows for sure. But perhaps memory is less about precision and more about presence. Your palace is not static. It breathes with you, it forgets with you, and it grows with you. You drift back now to the centre, to the courtyard with no ceiling, where stars blink overhead like forgotten wishes. You look around. You feel both full and incomplete. And that is what it means to remember to live with both knowing and not knowing, to carry the weight and the whisper, to love even the missing rooms for what they once held. And as you close your eyes within this imagined place, you smile, because even if you forget this dream, the palace remembers you. The walls around you begin to shimmer with something heavier now, not in weight, but in gravity. You're not in the structural wings of memory anymore, not the places with rooms and books and doors. You've entered the heart of the palace, the chamber where emotion decides what memory becomes. It is quieter here. The silence doesn't feel empty. It feels full, thick with moments that never fully formed into words, only into feeling. You see them as shapes in the dark. Not faces, not places, but tides, pulses, currents that pulled you before you even knew how to name them. You float close to one now, a moment you haven't thought of in years. It flickers, a voice raised, a look turned away, a hurt you couldn't hold, so your mind gently closed the door. It's still there. You feel it. This is the strange truth about memory. Emotion can both carve it deep and seal it tight. Memories tied to strong emotions, joy, grief, fear, love tend to last longer. That's what researchers have found, over and over again. It's not just repetition that locks a memory in, it's how it felt, what it did to your breath, your chest, your tears. The amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster nestled deep in your brain, is partly responsible for this. It processes emotion, then signals the hippocampus. This matters. Save this. And the hippocampus listens. Unless it doesn't. Unless it's overwhelmed. You drift by another memory now. This one is harder. You don't want to open it. And the door, it won't let you. Some memories are buried not because they were unimportant, but because they were too much, too loud, too sharp, too soon. This is what trauma does. It wraps the moment in silence, not out of cruelty, but as a kind of mercy. There are memories in your mind that you survived, but never unwrapped, and still, they shape you. You pass through a field of these now moments without names, wrapped in tissue, guarded by shadows. You don't open them. You honour them, because forgetting, here, isn't forgetting at all. It's remembering, from afar. Sometimes, when you smell something unexpected, or hear a tone in someone's voice, one of these memories stirs. Not fully, just enough to pull you sideways, to make your eyes glassy, your voice softer. That's called implicit memory. It doesn't arrive as a story. It arrives as a feeling, the kind that makes you cry without knowing why. Or smile at a stranger because they remind you of someone, though you can't say who. And then there are the ones you do remember too well, the heartbreaks, the losses, the wounds replayed in sharp definition. These are flashbulb memories etched into your brain with unnatural clarity. You don't just remember what happened. You remember the angle of the light, the temperature of the air, the exact rhythm of your heartbeat as it broke. But clarity doesn't mean accuracy. Even the sharpest emotional memory can shift, grow distorted. The brain, in its effort to hold what hurts, may reshape the edges, tucking the worst parts away, exaggerating others. You float by one such memory now. You thought you remembered it perfectly. But looking closer, you notice some faces have blurred, some lines have softened, and somehow that's a relief. Because healing, too, is a kind of forgetting, not erasing the event, but releasing its grip. You move deeper, where the air feels like water. Here, even thoughts move slowly. You drift past a joy you once felt, an embrace, a song. The moment the world felt impossibly large and achingly perfect. You hadn't thought of that in years. But it returns now, not with words, with warmth. Your body remembers what your mind forgot, the scent, the rhythm, the way your ribs lifted just a little wider that day. This is emotional memory retrieval, and it's rarely logical. Sometimes grief reawakens joy. Sometimes joy uncovers grief. The two are never far apart. They travel in pairs, and sometimes the most beautiful memories are the hardest to hold, because to remember them is to feel their absence. You float past a final memory for now. It glows gently in a corner. It is neither good nor bad, just unresolved. A conversation that never happened, a goodbye that didn't come in time. You reach for it. And this time, the door opens, not wide, just enough. You see a younger you sitting quietly, holding something unsaid, and you whisper to them, "It's okay." The memory doesn't vanish, but it softens. It becomes part of you in a new way, no longer locked, just resting. And as you drift onward, you understand something deep and wordless. Emotion is the gatekeeper of memory. It decides what we carry and when, and forgetting is often its gentlest answer. You float now through a new kind of silence, not the silence of forgetting, nor the hush of dreams. This is the long quiet, the hush of years, the space between who you were and who you are still becoming. The air here feels gentle, worn, like pages turned again and again until the ink begins to blur. And this, too, is memory. Not the bright spark of recall, not the sharp flash of the unforgettable, but the slow, soft wearing down of what once was vivid. Time doesn't erase, it softens, like rain slowly carving its story into stone. You pass a memory, now a birthday, maybe. You remember the cake, you remember the light, but the faces, the exact words gone. Or maybe, folded into fog, you don't feel panic, only tenderness. This is the erosion of memory, and it is natural. Scientists call it transience. It's the gradual fading of information over time when it's not retrieved, revisited, reinforced. It's not a flaw, it's not weakness, it's biology. evolution, elegance. Your brain is not designed to be a perfect archive. It is designed to change, and forgetting is part of how it survives. If you remembered everything the colour of every passing car, every cereal box you ever saw, every sigh, you would be lost in the noise. So the mind lets go, not randomly, but in rhythm. You drift now through memories worn by time. They feel like photographs left in sunlight, still there, but touched by brightness, bleached into something lighter. You remember how someone once said your name. You don't remember why it mattered, but the echo of the feeling remains. That's the magic of time. It leaves behind traces, even as it removes details. You move past another memory, one you once clung to, a heartbreak, a goodbye. You held it so tightly once, but now it feels distant, not gone, just no longer sharp. You can breathe near it now. You can float beside it without flinching. This, too, is erosion, not destruction, not forgetting, just softening. Time dulls the edges of pain and sometimes of joy. You might forget the words of a compliment, but remember how it warmed you. You might forget the moment you fell in love, but still carry the way it opened your chest. Your memories don't vanish. They change their shape. They migrate deeper, like roots. They stop shouting. They hum. And with time, you begin to hear them differently. A study once followed people over decades, asking them to recall the same events year after year, and each time the details shifted. Not because they lied, but because memory lives inside a changing brain, inside a changing self. You're never the same person remembering. So the memory, too, evolves. You drift into a memory now from your childhood. You don't know if it's real, a picnic, a song, someone spinning you by the hands. It might be a dream, or a story someone told you, but it lives in you as if it were yours. And that, scientists say, is normal. The brain fills gaps. It weaves its tapestry not with facts, but with meaning. And meaning can survive even when memory fades. This is called reconstructive memory. Each time you recall something, you recreate it. And sometimes, that act of recreation changes the memory itself. So over time, you don't just forget, you reshape. Your memories are not fossils, they are rivers, and rivers carve. You float now through one such river, a winding stream of moments, and you see that forgetting is not an end, it's part of the flow. There are memories you haven't touched in decades. They rise now, faintly. A blanket, a voice humming in the dark, a glimpse of stars from the back seat of a car. And you realize these fragments matter, even without full context, even without names. They are part of the sediment that makes you you. And time has simply refined them. You float farther now into the parts of your mind shaped most gently by age. Older memories, ones formed long ago, tend to endure more than recent ones. It's called the reminiscence bump, that peculiar poetic phenomenon where people remember their adolescence and early adulthood most vividly, even as other details fade. Why, perhaps because that is when identity crystallizes, when emotion soaks into the sponge of the mind, or perhaps because that is when the music first began to matter. When the sky first felt like yours, you smile as you pass these old rooms. They are dusty, but warm, and then you drift towards something newer, a memory from last week. It's already slipping, already fading, and you don't panic, because now you understand. You don't have to carry everything. Time will carry some of it for you. You let it go. You watch it float into the distance. its details crumbling like shoreline, and still you feel whole, because even in forgetting, you are being shaped, like cliffs by wind, like statues by weather, like mines by time. You settle now into the water, letting it cradle you, letting time take what it must, letting memory change its shape. And you whisper to the fading edge of thought, "Thank you for staying as long as you did." The walls begin to shimmer around you again, but this time they do not feel like stone or glass or shadow. They feel alive, soft and shifting beneath your presence, as if you've wandered into a city that rebuilds itself with every thought you think. You're not standing still here, you're drifting through motion, not motion of the body, but motion of becoming. This is the living fabric of your brain's quiet renovation. This is neuroplasticity. It is not loud. It does not roar with change. It whispers. It stretches. It leans gently in the direction of experience, of choice, of use. The paths inside you, the synapses, the networks, they are never frozen. You float above them now, like watching city lights from a plane window at midnight. Some streets shine brightly, the ones you travel often. The things you practice, repeat, believe. Others flicker, dimmed with disuse, still present, but quiet. And some have vanished, overgrown, dismantled, as if they were never there. But they were. You feel them in the hum of what used to be. This is what forgetting sometimes is, not disappearance, but renovation. The brain prunes what it doesn't need. It reinforces what matters. It reallocates space, like moving furniture in a home that no longer fits the old design. And you're not the same person you were yesterday. Your thoughts have carved new grooves. Your habits have laid fresh tracks. Your grief has rearranged the architecture. And all of this is beautiful. You float through this reshaping like a breeze through scaffolding. You see where once you practiced a language, and now it lies unused, not destroyed, just softened. You see where once you believed something deeply, but now the belief is cracked, its path broken, its meaning changed. You feel the tenderness of that loss and its quiet liberation. Neuroplasticity is the brain's miraculous ability to change its structure, its very wiring, in response to experience, even in adulthood, even in old age, even in sorrow. And sometimes, especially because of sorrow, trauma can carve deep grooves, but healing builds bridges across them, new roads, new connections. You drift by one now. A thought you once feared, it no longer stings, because something inside you found another way. This is the renovation, not forgetting with emptiness, but forgetting with intention, the letting go that makes room, the unlearning that allows new truths to bloom. You hover above another path, this one lit with joy, a song you've played every day, a routine that gives you peace. Each time you return to it, your brain strengthens the signal. Use it or lose it, they say. But use it, and it becomes part of you. You float by childhood memories, some still sharp, others blurred. The ones you repeated in stories, in pictures, in family retellings, they remain. The others dissolve, not out of neglect, out of need. The brain cannot keep it all, and so it chooses. Not always logically, not always fairly, but faithfully. You drift now through a scene in motion, neurons forming new branches like vines seeking sunlight, glial cells supporting, axons extending, a memory being made, and perhaps a memory being unmade. Because plasticity is not just construction, it is also demolition. Old thought patterns disassembled, old routines broken. This is what therapy is, what habit breaking is, what falling out of love is. Not instant, not clean, but gradual, graceful, like a tide slowly wearing away a shoreline. You watch it happen, not as a scientist, but as a witness to your own becoming. The person you were 5 years ago would not recognize this moment, and that's okay, because your brain, quietly, without permission, without apology, has rewritten parts of you. It is still doing it now. Each breath you take, each new thing you learn, each time you forgive or change your mind. Forgetting, in this context, isn't a mistake. It's a doorway. You float now into a chamber of silence. Here, a thought once lived. You used to worry over it, cling to it, build decisions around it. Now, it is gone, and you are free. This is neuroplasticity's gift. Not the ability to remember everything, but the capacity to outgrow. You drift on, light as wind through wires. The city of your mind shifts below you, always under construction, always alive. And you smile because forgetting, when held gently, can be the most powerful kind of change. You begin to notice them now, not shapes, not sounds, but flickers, small presences on the edge of perception, like lights behind a curtain or footsteps in the next room. Faint, persistent, familiar. These not memories, exactly, not clear enough, not whole. They are the shadows of thoughts, the ones you believed forgotten. But here they are, quietly alive beneath the surface. You drift deeper, past the loud corridors of conscious memory, past the bright halls where names and places live, down into the subterranean space of your own mind, the vault beneath the vault. The air grows cool and dense, and in this place, nothing speaks above a whisper. Here lies your implicit memory, a vast ocean of things you've learned, felt, known, but no longer name. It is here that you find the weight of a mother's hand on your back, the tension you hold when someone raises their voice, the calm of rain on a window, though you can't recall the last time you watched it fall. You pass these shadows like old trees, silent, towering, rooted in experience too deep for words. These are not the memories that walk into a room and introduce themselves. These are the ones that sway behind your choices, that shape your preferences, your posture, your dreams. Some scientists call this non-declarative memory. It includes the things you never had to recite. How to walk, how to ride a bike, how to recognize sarcasm, how to flinch at a certain tone of voice. Things your body learned while your mind was busy with other tasks. You float through this space, and you see your mind is not a museum. It is a cave system, deep, layered, with chambers that hold echoes instead of exhibits. You pass a room now, it's nearly empty. Only a flicker remains a scent that once meant something. Vanilla lilac. You don't remember the moment, but your heart skips, your breath changes, and you understand this was a shadow that shaped something in you. You drift farther. There's a door that never opens. You don't need it to. You feel what's behind it, a boundary your mind made long ago to protect you. Trauma often lives in these shadows, not as stories, but as responses. You may not remember the pain, but your body still braces. You may not recall the face, but your breath shortens in rooms like the one where it happened. This is called somatic memory, the body remembering what the mind forgot. It is why healing often begins not with understanding, but with noticing. The flicker, the shadow, the way a forgotten thought still casts a ripple. And then there are the joys that live here too. A favourite song you don't remember learning, but your hands still find the chords. A familiar kindness in your voice when you speak to children learned from someone you can no longer name. These too are shadows, soft ones, guiding ones. You float now through a tunnel of motion. Here are your procedural memories, the ones that let you dance. Type, tie your shoes without thinking. They are deeply buried, etched into circuits that hum without your awareness. They are why people with memory loss can still play piano, why someone who forgets their name can still sway to music they once loved. Because some thoughts are too deep to forget. They become movement, they become rhythm, and then you see something strange, a thought you don't remember ever having, but it feels like yours. Perhaps it came from a book, a story, a glance, something absorbed long ago and folded into the fabric of your beliefs. You never examined it, but here it is still influencing. This is priming, the idea that exposure shapes response, even when you forget the exposure. Your brain holds on to impressions, layers of influence, brushstrokes from 1,000 forgotten encounters. You float through this haze with curiosity, not fear. You see how forgetting does not mean erasure, it means transformation. Some thoughts do not stay where they started, they sink, but even at the bottom, they ripple. You drift now toward the surface. You feel the weight of what lives beneath you, not as burden as depth. You are not just what you remember. You are what has touched you, what has changed you, what has left its shape behind, even if its name is gone. These are the shadows, and they are not haunting. They are anchoring. You rise from the deep, not empty, but full of quiet inheritances. Things you thought you lost, things you never knew you kept. They whisper still, not loudly, not clearly, but lovingly. And you, in this gentle night, listen. The world is softer here, the colours dim but golden, like sunlight filtered through curtains you remember but haven't seen in decades. You don't walk in this place, you glide, as if drawn gently by invisible threads of time, each one anchored to a room, a face, a song you once knew by heart. You've entered the most fragile chamber in your memory childhood, not the facts, not the birth dates or the milestones, but the feeling of it, the warmth and ache of being small, of not yet knowing how to name your world, but knowing how to live inside it. You drift past a hallway, now its wallpaper is wrong, or right. You're not sure, but the pattern stirs something in you. You turn a corner and there it is, a room with wooden floors, a plastic toy glinting near the edge, the scent of crayons, the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. It doesn't matter if this room is real, your mind remembers it, and in remembering, it becomes real again. This is the magic and the heartbreak of childhood memory. You reach for a doorknob that's lower than you remember. It fits your hand, and when you open it, you feel the rush of air, cold and sweet, and the strange flutter of being alive in a world that felt so big once. You step inside. No one is here, but someone was. You can feel them, not as an image, not even as a voice, just presence. Scientists call these autobiographical memories, the stories we tell ourselves about who we've been. They're deeply emotional, deeply human. They shape our identity, our sense of continuity, but they're also unreliable. Childhood memories are especially fragile, easily reshaped, easily lost, because the brain is still forming, because language is still being learned, because trauma can rearrange the archive before it's even built, and yet they endure in pieces, a smell, a tone, the slant of afternoon light on a tiled floor. You pass by these now, drawn not by logic, but by the ache of recognition, that familiar grief of remembering something too faint to hold. You see a child's shoes on a mat, you feel the tightness in your chest. You don't know why. Tears come, not from sadness, from return. Some researchers call this involuntary memory, a memory pulled from the depths, not by effort, but by experience. A scent, a melody, a place. Your brain, it seems, has bookmarks, and when something in the present lines up just right, you fall back into the page. Not all of these returns are sweet. Some are confusing. Some carry a sadness you can't explain. You might cry at the sound of a wind chime, without knowing it echoes a moment of being alone. You might laugh at a cartoon character, and suddenly remember the safety of a parent's lap. These are not scenes. They are echoes. They are how childhood speaks back to us through the fog of forgetting. You drift into another room now, a bedroom. The bed is too short, the ceiling too high, but your body remembers. You lay down, and for a moment, you are there, not as a replica, but as a resonance. Memory, here, is stored in feeling, in posture, in breath. You close your eyes and hear a lullaby. You don't know all the words, but you hum it anyway, because your heart remembers the rhythm. You drift upward now, past paper mobiles, past the scent of peanut butter and warm milk, past the sound of footsteps on stairs. Not all of this is real, and yet you feel real. You remember a fear you had of shadows, of being left behind, of thunder, and you smile, because now you can hold that fear gently, like a blanket folded away long ago. This is what forgetting can do, not erase, but soften, dissolve the sharpness, leave behind the shape, the warmth, the lesson. Not all your childhood memories remain. Some were never stored, some were overwritten, but they live in your preferences, in your choices, in your comforts, why you love the smell of rain, why you hate small rooms, why certain colours feel like home. You drift toward the edge of the memory now. It fades, not like a door closing, but like a song ending gently. And you let it go, because you have carried it long enough, because its echo is enough, and because in forgetting the detail, you have remembered the meaning, the light, the feeling of being safe, even if just for a moment. You float out of childhood's lost rooms with something you didn't have before. Gratitude, not for what you remember, but for what shaped you, even as it slipped away. The ground is gone now. You float higher than memory itself, above cities, above continents, above the very map of what once known. Beneath you, time unfurls like an ancient scroll, not linear, not clean, but weathered, torn at the edges, fragments missing where memory once lived. This is not just your forgetting. This is ours, collective, civilizational, the forgetting of peoples, of languages, of entire worlds that no longer speak. And you ask the question you didn't know was waiting in you. Where does human history go when it forgets? You drift gently over deserts that were once green, mountains where empires stood, rivers that fed stories now buried beneath silt. Everywhere you look, There are ghosts of knowledge, entire cities swallowed by forest, gods no longer worshipped, scripts no longer deciphered, and yet each of them, once, was as real as you are now. They had mothers, markets, music, and laughter. You listen closely. You hear it still, faint, lingering, like the last notes of a song echoing in an abandoned hall. There is a name for this process: cultural memory, the way societies store, pass on, and sometimes lose the knowledge of who they were. It happens slowly, a ritual skipped for one generation, a story not retold, a word that fades from the tongue, and one day gone. You drift now above the Library of Alexandria, or what's left of it. Once the brightest mind of the ancient world, home to knowledge now dust. Scrolls lost to fire. Philosophies vanished. Medicines that might have healed. Gone before they were passed on. It's tempting to mourn, to rage, but then you float farther, and you see forgetting has made room for new truths, new stories as new rituals, new names for stars. Forgetting is not just loss, it is clearing. It is the breath between ideas. You drift across the ocean. Below, the seafloor cradles shipwrecked manuscripts, lost languages that no longer have speakers, their words never written down, only carried in breath. And when the last breath went quiet, so did the language. But language, like thought, does not disappear without leaving fingerprints. There are words in your mouth now that once belonged to forgotten tongues. There are songs you hum whose melody comes from voices lost to time. Memory is porous, and collective memory even more so. We forget not in silence, but in echo. Historians, archaeologists, linguists, they dig into this silence every day, recovering fragments, piecing together what once was whole, and yet there will always be gaps. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not everything was meant to be remembered. Maybe some stories are meant to return as myth, as rhythm, as something unnameable but still deeply known. You drift now through the ruins of a forgotten city. Its stones whisper. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. Longing, pride, tenderness. Even in erasure, there is meaning. There are civilizations that chose to forget, to bury what hurt, to start again. There are those who resisted forgetting, who carved their stories in stone, painted them on cave walls, sang them across generations. And there are those who were made to forget, colonized, erased, their memories suppressed, their identities rewritten. You drift gently through their shadows. You honor them, for forgetting is not always a choice. Sometimes it is taken, and yet, like seeds underground, memory waits, revival is possible, languages can be relearned, songs rediscovered, histories restitched. You see it now, memory is not linear, it spirals. It returns. You watch a child learn an old word her grandmother once spoke, revived through effort and love. You watch a buried temple unearthed, its symbols lighting up again in the minds of scholars. You watch stories once silenced find new breath through film, through art, through song. Nothing is truly lost, only waiting, only whispering. And perhaps the greatest mystery of collective forgetting is how it reveals what we hold most dear, what we remember, what we fight to preserve, what we're willing to carry from one generation to the next. You rise now, above the entire map of time, so many rooms darkened, so many still glowing. You're part of this great forgetting, and this great remembering. two are a vessel of stories, of laughter, of fragments. You carry civilizations in your breath, even the forgotten ones. And as you drift back into yourself, you wonder softly, what will we remember tomorrow? And what with grace will we finally let go? You descend now, gently, into a mind in slow retreat, not in panic, not in collapse, but in quiet undoing. The air here feels tender, as if the space itself is trying to remember something but cannot find the thread. This is a mind touched by Alzheimer's, and here, forgetting is not graceful, it is not optional, it is a tide that does not stop rising. You do not rush, you move slowly, you respect the silence. All around you, the neural pathways feel fragile, like tapestries loosening, like threads slipping free from their woven form. What was once richly embroidered with names, places, faces, begins to fray, and yet, even now, there is dignity, there is beauty in what remains. You drift beside a memory trying to hold its shape. A husband's name, a daughter's voice, the word for spoon, the shape of morning light on the windowsill. Each flickers like a candle in a room where wind is always blowing. Scientists have spent decades mapping this unravelling. They know how Alzheimer's begins not with great noise, but with the slow build-up of plaque and tangle in the brain's architecture. Beta amyloid, tau proteins, words that sound sterile, but their effects are anything but. You drift through the hippocampus again only now. It is dimmed. Its maps are torn. The librarian no longer knows where the books are kept. New memories, no matter how precious, fail to land. They pass like clouds without ever touching ground. And the old ones, they begin to dissolve. Not all at once, but thread by thread. Still, somewhere in this soft collapse, something astonishing happens. You float through a memory of music. A song plays, one they heard as a child, and their eyes widen. They hum, they sway, because music lives elsewhere, stored deeper, more enduring. It bypasses the wreckage and enters like light through a broken window. You drift into another room. A woman looks at her reflection and does not know her own name, but when her granddaughter hugs her, her arms respond. Because love, real love, is not just a name, it is muscle memory. It is warmth felt in the bones. Alzheimer's does not steal everything. It cannot touch the parts of us woven into gesture, into touch, into rhythm. These are called procedural memories, and they last longer. They are the last to go. Even when the face is unfamiliar, the dance of holding hands remains. You float farther. The cortex once busy is quieter now. The thoughts that used to rush are still, and yet you see sparks, not many, but some, fragments of lucidity, moments of clear water between waves of fog, a recognition, a word, a smile. And those who love them, they wait for these, they cherish them, because even one moment is a lifeline. And when it fades again, they hold the memory of the memory. That, too, is love. You watch as caregivers speak gently, even when they are not understood. They repeat names. They share stories. They fill the silence with kindness. They are the keepers of the thread when the loom forgets how to weave, and sometimes that is enough. You think now of how many memories define a life, how many moments make a person, and you wonder if they forget their stories. Do they become someone else, or do they simply return to something softer? A presence, a being, a rhythm of breath. Philosophers have asked for centuries what is the self, if not our memories. But perhaps the self is also what remains when memory is gone. A hum of kindness, a glance, a soft insistence on holding hands even when the words are lost. You drift beside a final memory in this place. It is dissolving. You don't stop it. You watch. And in its fading, you see a kind of grace. Not a failure, not an absence, but a letting go, a surrender. Like autumn leaves falling to make space for snow, you rise now from the quiet. You carry what you've seen. You carry the question. Where does love go when it can't be named? And your heart whispers, it stays, in gesture, in rhythm, in touch, in the space between forgetting and being held. The light shifts around you now cooler, crisper. Gone is the warm, foggy glow of neurons and dreams. You're somewhere new, somewhere humming. You drift through blinking lights and endless rows of circuitry. There's no breath here, no blood, but there is motion, there is memory. Welcome to the realm of artificial minds. Here, memory is measured in bits, in binary pulses, on or off, stored or deleted, or so it seems. But even here, in this machine-made world, forgetting is not so simple. You follow a single file as it moves through the ether. It was once opened daily, a photo, a journal entry, an audio message sent from one heart to another. Now it sits idle, unaccessed, unspoken, forgotten. But is it really gone? It still lives on a drive, in a cloud, on a backup server somewhere far from here. It has not been erased. It has simply stopped being seen. And suddenly, you realize this isn't so different from you. You, too, store memories that go untouched for years. You, too, forget not through erasure, but through absence. And when something calls it forth again, a scent, a song, a sudden name, the file is reopened. The moment replays. Even your most analog emotions mirror this digital dance. But machines, for all their precision, do not feel loss. Not yet. They forget when we tell them to. When we overwrite. When we delete. And yet, there are echoes. Deleted files leave traces, fragments, ghosts. Computer scientists call it data remnants, the residual presence of digital information even after deletion. You float past a discarded hard drive. Its lights are out, but inside, tiny remnants flicker. A sentence, a date, a forgotten laugh, coded in pixels. It's not readable, but it exists. You drift further. You see a machine learning model. Its artificial brain lit with patterns. It has never lived, never dreamed, but it remembers, not with feeling, with weight. It adjusts its algorithm based on past input. It learns. It forgets patterns that no longer serve its task. And here, in its digital memory, you see something familiar. The function of forgetting, not as loss, but as optimization. Even artificial minds must let go to stay useful, to adapt. In neural networks, the ones that mimic your own, they're the concept called catastrophic forgetting. When new data is learned, it can overwrite the old, unintentionally, irrevocably. You feel a pang watching it. How easily the new can push out the old when no care is taken to preserve. And yet some systems learn to balance just as to archive, to choose. You wonder if a machine forgets something you taught it. Does that loss live in you alone, or do machines, in their own way, carry ghosts? You pass through a digital archive now. Billions of names, messages, videos, moments. Some of these memories belong to people who no longer live. their voices, their faces, still searchable, still retrievable. And you ask yourself, what kind of forgetting is this? Is it forgetting if the data remains but no one remembers to look, or is it a new kind of memory altogether, one that outlives the mind that made it? We are, as a species, pouring our memories into machines. Photos of children never printed, journals never inked, conversations stored in clouds we cannot touch, and yet this is our new memory palace, glowing, buzzing, ever expanding, but not eternal. Digital decay is real. Formats become obsolete, hard drives fail, links break. One day, a file that once carried love will return, 404 not found, and someone will search for it and wonder where it went, just as you search your own mind for the sound of a mother's laugh, only to find static. You drift now through a corridor of artificial forgetting, a server room wiped clean, an AI untrained, a language model reset, and you feel the quiet of it, the stillness of memory that never had emotion. Machines forget without sorrow, without meaning, but you forget with ache, with longing, with reverence, and still you find kinship here, because forgetting, even in machines, makes space, and maybe, one day, machines will carry your memories when your mind cannot. They already do, in photos you haven't looked at in years, in voicemails saved but unheard, in timelines preserved for no one in particular. You drift back from the blinking lights, from the code, from the hum. You return to the beating mind, to breath, to blood. But you carry with you a new question. When memory leaves the body and enters the machine, does it lose something, or does it simply take on a new kind of soul? You return now to a quieter place, not artificial, not ancient, but somewhere closer to home, to the hush between your own thoughts, to the still breath of a mind at peace. You are drifting through the softest part of forgetting, not the painful kind, not the loss that aches like a vanished name, but the kind that slips through the fingers like silk, that releases the grip, that says, I no longer need to carry this. This, you see, is the poetry of not remembering, and it is everywhere, in the way your eyes pass over a stranger's face and feel no pull, in the way you open a drawer and pause, wondering why you came there at all, in the names you've read, the voices you've heard, the roads you've walked once and never again. Not all forgetting is grief. Some of it is grace. You drift now through a forest of quiet connections. Neurons, still and dim, rest like leaves in early autumn. They are not broken, they're simply no longer needed, or perhaps they've done their job. The brain doesn't just keep you alive, it keeps you from drowning in everything, every sight, every sound, every heartbeat. It decides softly, hour by hour, what to let go and what to keep, and more often than not, it chooses mercy. You move now through the shadow of the conversation you once had. You remember the glow of the room. You remember how your voice trembled, but the words gone, and yet the meaning is still in you. Scientists have tried to pin forgetting to processes, decay, disuse, interference, but none of these explain the wonder of forgetting a sorrow and keeping the lesson, of losing the day, but remembering the hug. The science calls it semantic retention with episodic decay. You forget the specifics, but the truth remains. You smile. Your brain, it seems, is not a record player. It is a poet. It rewrites, it condenses, it rhymes. And so, you forget the chore, but remember the joy of completion. You forget the errand, but remember the kindness of the cashier. Even your dreams, absurd, wild, untethered, vanish in the morning. And still, your mood is different. Because forgetting, here, is not a failure. It's movement, the rhythm of letting go. You drift into a hollow space now, a space in your mind that once held a thought, a favourite quote, perhaps, or the name of a character in a book you loved. You search for it. It's not there. But instead of frustration, you feel release. You're not a museum. You're a stream. Thoughts flow through you. Some settle. Some pass. All of them shape your riverbed, even the ones you've forgotten. You pass through a long hallway of questions, ones you once carried like stones. You don't remember the answers. Maybe you never had them, but you've stopped asking, not because you gave up, because you grew. This, too, is forgetting. You remember what it was like to be 17, but you no longer know what mattered most then, because new things came, new people, new loves, new griefs. Your brain made room, and it did so quietly, like pruning roses, like turning pages. You glide into a space of complete stillness, a memoryless moment. You feel no pull, no echo, no ache. Just now, just breath. This too is a gift. Not every second needs to be remembered. Not every day must be archived. There is freedom in ephemerality, in allowing things to be, without needing them to remain. You remember now that forgetting is not just a tool for function. It's a strategy for joy. It protects. It heals. It gives room to wonder again, without the weight of certainty. You pass a field of thoughts never stored, conversations never encoded, glances that passed unnoticed. They were never remembered, and yet they still shaped you. You're not only the sum of your memories, you're also the sum of your letting go, the times you chose peace over proof, the times you let the thought fade because it no longer served your becoming. You drift, now, like a leaf on a slow stream, and you listen, not for the thoughts that remain, but for the ones that have left, with love, for the ones that whispered I was here and stepped softly out of your mind. You breathe in. You do not remember every face. You do not need to. You do not remember every word you once spoke, but you have become what those words meant. You do not remember the moment you became who you are, but you are here, and that is enough. You drift now beyond memory, beyond names, beyond form, beyond even the flicker of identity that once called itself you. You rise gently into the quiet arms of the universe, no longer asking where thoughts go when they're forgotten, but simply feeling how they remain, not as facts, not as scenes, but as something subtler, a rhythm, a warmth, a presence that does not need remembering to still exist. The stars blink above you now, not as distant fire, but as soft eyes watching gently, and you, the little spark once wrapped in skin, are no longer reaching. You are resting. The universe does not keep a diary. It doesn't jot down every movement, every breath, every sigh, and yet nothing is lost. Every word you've ever spoken sent vibrations into the air. Tiny ripples of pressure, carried forward, fading, perhaps, but never erased. Every thought, every burst of emotion, every sigh in the dark, changed your body, changed the air around you, shaped the people who sat beside you. You are here. Even the things you've forgotten, they did their work. They carved you. They left fingerprints on the inside of your ribs, and the universe remembers, in its own way, not like a hard drive, not like a brain, but like a song. Every star pulses with echoes of beginnings. Every comet carries the dust of what once burned. You pass now through galaxies so old they've forgotten their birth, but they still shine, because memory is not the only way to remain. Sometimes it is enough to have existed, to have radiated, to have once loved. You see yourself now, not as a single thread, but as part of the whole fabric, woven into stardust, neural fire, morning light. Even the thoughts you lost the names, the places, the stories that slipped through your hands left patterns in the soil, and someone else will walk across that soil. They'll feel something they can't explain, a warmth, a resonance, a strange familiarity, and in that moment you will have returned. This is the soft immortality of thought, of presence, of the soul's quiet echo. The universe does not need your name to carry your imprint. It remembers the way you bent light when you smiled, the way your silence made room for someone else's story, the way your laughter cracked open a room and let morning in. You, dear one, are not forgotten. You are diffused. You are everywhere now, not in databases, not in indexes, but in wind, in warmth, in the softness you left behind. And so, as you let go now of every word, every story, every shape you once thought defined, you know this. What matters remains, not in memory, but in meaning, not in form, but in feeling, not as a list of moments, but as a hum beneath the stars. And in this final breath before sleep, you understand some thoughts do not need to be remembered. They only needed to be lived, and you lived them. So now, dear dreamer, let yourself rest. You've wandered through the chambers of forgetting, through neurons and echoes, through songs and shadows, through all the places where your mind chooses to let go and, in doing so, becomes lighter. You've seen how thoughts dissolve not in despair, but in grace. How memory isn't a vault, but a garden growing, shedding, blooming again. The names you couldn't recall, the stories that faded, the childhood dreams that drifted into fog. They were not lost. They were gifts, meant to be held only for a time. And now, your body knows. It sinks into the mattress, the breath deepens, the fingers soften. Let your thoughts drift out like lanterns over a still lake. You do not need to hold them. You do not need to chase them. Let them go, and in their place, invite the hush, the sacred stillness where nothing needs to be known, or remembered, or proved. You are already enough, in the quiet, in the dark, in the soft rhythm of your heart. You're remembered. By the universe, by time, by the subtle shimmer of everything you've ever touched. So close your eyes. The forgetting is done. The dreaming is near. You are safe. You are whole. And tomorrow your thoughts will rise again, new and beautiful, like light blooming across the sky.